Good afternoon. This is a hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on April 12th, 2023, in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw and Regulations. My name is Bob Rawls and I serve as the chair. Today's hearing is being broadcast live on Channel 18 and is being recorded for the on-demand archives available on the town's website. It is being conducted in person, by phone, and by video conference. The agenda, instructions on how to attend, and copies of documents for review are posted on the town's website. To all participants, whether attending by phone or online, please remain muted unless you have been recognized by the chair. When recognized, please identify yourself for the record. If you're attending by phone, you can mute and unmute by using *6. If you're online and you're not a commissioner, please keep your camera turned off unless you have been recognized. Indicate that you wish to speak by using the raise hand feature. So that we have a record of a quorum, I'll now ask each commissioner to indicate their presence. Vice Chair Bob Delvecchio.
Present.
Janet Williams.
Present.
Karen Latin. And you're muted, Karen, but I do see you.
Said present. Yeah.
Yes, she said present, yes. Mary Sullivan. All right, thank you. Mary Sullivan.
Present.
Elise Gordon.
Present.
Cheryl Meservey.
Present.
I'm here, so we have a full house and a quorum. Nikki Smith, Chatham's conservation agent, will now lead us through the agenda.
The first item up on the agenda is a request for a field change, 306 Hardings Beach Road, Dan and Julie McLaughlin, map 8B, parcel 10, SE 103528. Use of the sand excavated from the pool to fill in an odd depression in the buffer zone.
Okay, do we have?
Teresa here? Or any rep for that matter?
Anybody here?
On the platform.
Doesn't look like it.
No.
So, maybe we should come back to it?
Yeah, we'll come back, see if I notice anyone from Blue Flax jump on at some point. I mean, it is just right out, right about 1, so could be running a little late. So yeah, we can try and go back to that one. So the next one would be the order of conditions for 325 Fox Hill Road, Eastford Hoe Country Club, map 10M, parcel 21, SE 103618, proposed golf course improvements, including grading and invasive species management. I don't know if you saw my emails that we had gotten a new plan. So like I said, I didn't have time to go over exactly what was changed.
Right.
So if someone's here to explain what the changes were, that would be good. Unless anyone else had time to scrutinize it and thought it was just minor things.
I zipped through it quickly. They looked fairly reasonable, but at first glance, but I don't know who else has had a chance to see it. It is in Dropbox.
I did take a quick look at it. I was really pleased to see that the mitigation area was expanded to include an additional 2,600 square feet on the coastal bank, which is also full of invasives. So they heard us on that. Thank you for that. And that did raise the total. We see it in their comments. Total numbers up to 52,659 of restoration and 12,300 of removal. So I will update the.
Okay, all right.
I'll do it and get the order squared away with that.
And then I guess we can go through the comments after you do that.
What was it?
Yeah, is anyone here from Wilkinson? We have,
Sean Riley just jumped on.
just got on, okay. He probably thought we were.
Yes. Sorry about that. I was
That's
having a
okay, we
really hard
just
time
opened yours.
connecting to the meeting. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
So I think, so they're just reviewing the comments that you sent. If you could maybe go over some of the changes in the plan, just because we didn't have a time to really scrutinize and we weren't quite sure exactly everything that changed.
Yep. So we had discussed, Janet had recommended that we provide additional mitigation on hole number 15 to kind of clean things up and include that last little stretch. So we've modified the plans to include that area for additional mitigation along that stretch. And I believe that Wilkinson should be here. So there's no one from Wilkinson on the call?
Not at the moment. I'm hoping nothing's going wrong with our Teams link, because I feel like
I
our.
don't see a whole lot of people on the call.
Right, yeah, so I hope nothing's going wrong with that. I haven't heard of anything, but.
So they've also specified, on their plans, they've specified the number of trees. You want a clarification on the number of trees, and you were going to include a condition for the location of those trees within the 0 to 50 foot buffer on the 18th hole. Oh, there's Seth. I see he's just joining now. And also, I know that you had requested information about the pesticides and fertilizer. Frank Hancock, the superintendent for the course, has been away for the last couple of weeks, and I know Seth has been working with him. He just got back to compile information for that program. So Seth, we're just talking about a couple of things, the modifications on your plans that you've made with the trees, the identification of the trees, the number of trees on the 18th, and also for the pesticide, herbicide, or not, yeah, the pesticide and fertilizer. So if you want to just discuss those things.
Sure, happy to. Just pulling that up.
And I've
Are there
already
any-
made addition of the additional mitigation on the 15th hole that we've included that Janet had suggested.
Were there any questions
Well,
regarding the specification of the trees, or would you like me to just review those?
might as well review it because as Nikki says, we just got revisions. We really haven't had time to look at it, so.
Yeah, so I just run through it real quick, Seth.
Okay, sure. On a different page. Sorry, I'm dealing with a very slow computer for some reason. It's coming up though.
Well, it's a very resource-intensive file.
It is a very big file.
I opened it an hour and a half ago, and it's still opening, so just saying.
Yeah, because of all the color and the imagery that we had attached to it.
This is one case where the paper version wins.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
Yeah, right. Okay. The specific 9 trees at this point proposed are 2 black cherry, 1 eastern red cedar, 2 pitch pine, 2 tupelo, and 2 white oak. Because the oaks were some of the larger trees. We emphasized the deciduous species just to sort of be in keeping with that. But that was, we thought was the best sort of replacement ratio.
Okay. This is sort of in line with what condition says.
It's just that they're now listed
And then
on the
the-
restoration plan, so.
Yeah, they're specifically called out now rather than sort of leaving it looser. That additional area where I think it was primarily Rosa Rose was observed near the top of the coastal bank, that area's been specifically called out and included in the mitigation as well, and that has pushed the numbers up over 50,000 square feet of mitigation as well. I'll give you those exact numbers. Which are 52,659 square feet of restoration, and 12,000 square feet of removal of the invasive species.
Okay. Is that it?
Yep, I think those are the only changes that we had to the plans, right, Seth?
Okay, all right. So why don't we go through
That's
your,
correct, yep.
your email, Seth, where you had specific suggestions.
Okay, absolutely. I've got that right up. So the first four were really just primarily updates, just to help staff out, because we had, this was a quick turnaround with a 1 week, so we're trying to make that easy, just referencing the revision dates, as well as those square foot numbers, so you can just drop those right into the findings in order as you see fit. Those are the first three, and then it seemed like on page 11 and section D, it was just a standard condition that didn't really apply here, because it references a view corridor and showing that in an as-built plan. As we know, there's no, there are very nice views from this this golf course certainly, but nothing has been proposed to enhance those views or change those views. So just wouldn't want to create confusion at the time of a certificate of compliance. So
Right.
it appeared to us that 15A could just be deleted unless we were missing something.
Got it.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. There are no views there.
Well,
I mean, there are no,
there are spectacular views.
there are no,
To die for.
there's no view corridor on the
Right.
record. I guess is what I'm-
Yes, yes. There's, I would say, arguably some of the nicest views in Chatham, but we're not proposing to change those.
Right.
Then just a couple comments for clarity, and as you know, we really do read these conditions. I know we sometimes go into more detail than some other firms, but that's because we follow them very closely. So we recognize on 11G, special condition number 3, which is the permanent marking of the upland edges. The standard condition is in there, and we totally agree with the spirit and intent of that. But I'm not sure this is more complicated. It's almost three-dimensional because you have some of these SNEP areas. There do need to be cart access through there, which will be demarcated. It just seemed like one of these conditions where it's going to be hard to capture that in a one-liner, and working it out with staff is probably the best option.
Right, agreed. I think I had a comment in there already that we may not need it, so seems impractical to market.
Yeah. And then page 11 and section C, condition 14, we've been seeing your condition about not allowing foliar, and that's near and dear to my heart. I was actually the one that pioneered a lot of these techniques and brought them to Cape Cod many years or maybe decades ago as alternatives to foliar. But there are basically usually around year 2 or 3, you get to a point where these plants are so small that wiping techniques don't work, or even in the case of Japanese knotweed in particular, it will get very small and sometimes called witch brooming, where it being impacted by the treatments and it doesn't really have a hollow stem anymore, or even much vasculature to introduce that into. So I'm wondering if by putting some criteria on there, and this may work for a standard condition in general, we generally use a diameter of about 1/8 of an inch, which is really quite small. And that's at the point where wiping techniques just don't work, unfortunately, anymore. There's just not enough surface area. And fortunately, these are very small plants at this point, but the best thing is really just a very limited spot treatment of those. So I took a stab at trying to craft some language for you. The fear would be you could get to a very high level of control, and particularly with Japanese knotweed, if you don't really make sure that plant is eradicated, it will come back. That's a very, very extensive rhizome system, and it can disappear for a year and then somehow recover and resprout a following year. We've seen that a number of times. So just wanted to make sure that we can make sure these reach the functional eradication, which is what we're all going for. So this, in actuality, this probably represents about 2%, 2 to 5%, to be generous, of the type of management that you're doing, but it's often some of the most important management because it's what pushes you into the eradication category from the management category, which is obviously what we're all trying to get to with restoration.
Well, you do have a lot of invasives to deal with there. So question is, are we okay with their recommended language? Recommend an exception for woody plants, stem diameters of 1/8 inch or less. That's eighth of an inch or less?
Really small ones.
Okay. And herbaceous species which cannot be cut and wiped or stem injected due to malformation of stems or stem diameters of 1/8 of an inch or less. So so you're saying these are the ones that could be wiped?
They couldn't be cut and wiped. They're too small for cut and wipe, which is generally the treatment that you're using if you're not foliar. There's just not enough material to wipe, essentially.
So what would be the recommended method for management or removal?
You're basically just doing a low volume foliar to whatever foliage is above ground, which isn't very much, but that's the.
So a spray
That's the
method,
goal.
you're talking about spraying.
Yes.
Correct.
Well, yeah, sorry, foliar is, low volume foliar spray.
A spot spray.
Yeah.
And you're estimating that would constitute, again, what percentage of the invasives that you're dealing with? Roughly?
Yeah, probably less than 5%. Less than 5%. It's the very end of treatment where you're making sure the plants there's really no viable root materials left. That's the goal of invasive plant management and restoration plan. Is you want the root materials destroyed, and it's that very last treatment that usually does that.
And mechanical removal would not be an option in this case?
Not with, I reference bittersweet and knotweed in particular because they're so prolific at, if there's any viable root left, it's hard to pull the roots effectively, leave anything behind, and, less than an inch piece of root can regenerate a new plant. So, yeah, it's not a concern with something like a shrub form, honeysuckle. Those readily uproot and don't readily resprout from small root pieces.
Okay. So, comments, questions on Wilkinson's proposed alteration to our standard language for for treatment of invasives. Okay, no
I get it.
no comments. I guess by default, we accept your suggestion. Okay, so that's That's the end of the list.
That concludes our recommendation. Yep.
anything else? Okay, I guess not. So, so you think you captured it all, John? Okay.
I got it all.
Okay. All right, so I think we're good to go. If anybody else have any other questions, comments? Bob?
I got a few. Sean, the dumping area, that's at hole number 18?
That's correct.
Okay, so in findings number 5, it reads, the existing maintenance area will be significantly reduced in size. I would just change the existing maintenance area to the existing dumping area at hole number 18 will be significantly reduced in size.
Got it.
I'm sorry, the existing dumping area will be cleaned up and will be reduced in size.
That is correct.
Okay, and then special condition number 4. We haven't included the use of herbicides in the invasive plant management. So we should include a sentence allowing the herbicide applications by a mass licensed pesticide applicator in that paragraph.
Can you give me like?
So, yeah, so anywhere, I guess. Applicant must monitor, it says right here, let's see, that's the third sentence or second sentence?
Second sentence.
Seconds. So maybe after that sentence, I don't know, it doesn't matter, I guess. The herbicide, the use of herbicides will be allowed by a Massachusetts licensed pesticide applicator for the eradication of invasive plants only. That should be in all of our orders. I mean, if you're going to include that paragraph, I think Nikki mentioned that we were going to include that language in all of the orders as far as that paragraph goes. Or Crystal mentioned it anyway.
Yeah, and if it doesn't apply, wait, is that you said the fertilizer one?
Pesticide.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's-
using
that goes in everyone.
Yeah, using pesticides, herbicides for the use of invasive control. And then special condition number 8. Because much of the registry is a golf course, fertilizers and pesticides are traditionally used in order to maintain. I just added greens, tees, fairways, and rough. Those are the primary parts of a golf course, not just tees and fairways. So greens, tees, fairways, and rough.
My golf knowledge is showing here.
Did you get that, Jan?
Yep.
And then, let's see, what else? The golf course, in that same special condition, the golf course maintenance management will employ integrated pest management, IPM, and organic fertilizers Use of organic fertilizers and/or slow-release fertilizers whenever possible.
Okay,
And then special condition number 9, my pet peeve, first sentence, you can eliminate herbicides because pesticides is all inclusive.
I thought about that. I put it in
I
anyway.
thought I could slip it past you.
That's all I had, thank you.
Thanks, got it.
All right. Anything else from anyone? All right. I think we're ready to close and approve.
I'd like to make a motion that we close the hearing on 325 Fox Hill Road and approve the order of conditions with the changes noted for the same.
Roll call, oh, second. Where's our seconder?
Right, a Latin second. I didn't know if you wanted me to or somebody else.
It's a good question. Since you're remote again, do you want to do it? Sometimes there's a delay, going there and delay coming back, so maybe to speed it up.
Want me to do it?
Elisa's going to do it again. You have to be here to second.
I'll wear the Latin hat.
Cool.
Proud to do it. Gordon second.
All right, roll call vote. Cheryl,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Mary, and Karen.
Aye.
And Karen.
Aye.
And I vote aye too. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, and hope it works.
It will. Thank you very much.
All right, next up, we have the orders of conditions for 52 Ivy Hill Lane, David Whitcomb, map 8C, parcel S93, SE 103622, construction of a Title V subsurface sewage disposal system.
All right, so this file was in Dropbox a couple hours ago. I made comments on it, and then it disappeared. So now my comments are not there anymore. But I think I can remember most of them. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, do we have a rep? I assume that the
David Clark's on it.
oh, yes, okay, David. I guess we'll ask you, David, whether or not you have any comments,
I do
questions?
not.
Pardon?
I do not.
He does not have any comments.
Does not, okay, got it. Everyone's sort of low speaking. Maybe it's because my hearing's still out of my left ear. So I would propose, just to add a little more clarification, oh, heck, all right, the special conditions is really where it was, and that is that I think number 6, special condition 6, installation of native tree we planted to replace the tree already removed, location and species to be approved by the agent. And the same thing with the next one, special condition 7, just with native vegetation approved by the agent.
That's weird. Something must be going on because I definitely said with agent approval in some sort of wording on there. So yeah, something must be going on with this one.
Yeah. I know I had a few more than that, but I think those are the important
Could
ones.
be that you were both doing it at the same time. Like it
I
happened
didn't get
yesterday.
I didn't get a message saying, like I'm getting now, get the latest version.
Oh, okay.
So I think Nikki was done with it at that point. Don't know. Why it disappeared altogether from Dropbox is the real puzzler.
Yeah.
Anything else from anyone? It's pretty simple, straightforward, Title V upgrade.
I got a few.
Okay, Bob.
If you add a finding, number 7, a tree was cut and removed by the septic tank cover.
By this owner or a previous?
Wasn't it the leach field?
I'm not sure. There was a cover there. I thought
You
it
know-
was a tank.
In the version of this file that I was looking at, that was in there. So I think this
Yeah,
is,
that's
not-
what I'm saying, because I had put,
Yeah,
I had
this
had
is-
said that a tree was previously removed.
this is not even your latest version, Nikki, so.
Oh, yeah. Was it? Yeah.
Anyway, good eye. We'll put it back in there.
Okay. And then, special condition number 4, no more trees shall be removed. And then special condition number 5, the cedar tree adjacent to the construction access shall be protected with construction fencing. And then special condition number 7, if the, I just put the word in, existing holly adjacent to the construction site is removed or damaged. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Bob, good. Anyone else? All right, I think we have it.
I'll make a motion that we close the hearing on 52 Ivy Lane and approve the order of conditions as noted.
Gordon, second.
Roll call vote, Cheryl?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
All right, the next application is the notice of intent, various locations, Town of Chatham, Ted Keon, multiple maps and parcels, SC 103616, comprehensive dredging and disposal program. I can't see, but I assume Ted is present
He is
physically.
present, yes, he is
That is
present.
Okay.
Hobbled into his chair.
Gonna go through all 1,000 pages one by
Yeah,
one.
one by one.
Oh, let me start my timer. Where's my timer? Your volume.
Mic's on now?
Yep.
We will not be going through the entirety of the application in a sense unless the commission likes to look at any particular section of the application. I'm really going to just give a general overview of our program, the challenges we face, and highlight primarily just the changes that are essentially new, if you will, to what is, because it has not yet expired, our existing townwide permit. As again, brief background, a number of years ago, the state and federal agencies kind of agreed that instead of having principally communities, municipalities, have multiple permitting, well, you could if you chose, but they allowed us to package permits into basically a blanket umbrella permit, so that as changes, which, at least in our case, are relatively common, we wouldn't have to go through and change each individual one. We could just make modifications to the main permit, and they would be, incorporated. It greatly reduced the administrative component of starting fresh each time and having to, renew permits at a whole different set of timeframe. It's referred to as a 10-year comprehensive permit. Ours has been into effect for, frankly, more than 10 years due to other abilities to make some extensions, but we are coming due across the board with both the Concom and our state and federal agencies. So, I have said this many times in many presentations. Chatham is in a unique position located here on the Cape and particularly on the Elbow, where we have truly one of the most dynamic shorelines along the eastern seaboard. It's interesting to watch, but it's a challenge to manage, in particular relative to our navigation needs. We have a huge recreational fleet, as we all know, and we have the most significant fishing fleet on Cape Cod. So maintaining navigation access is very important, frankly critical to our maritime interests. The challenge is, however, we have a very, very dynamic shoreline. This slide just kind of, and I know everyone is pretty much familiar, but the challenges that we have faced over the number of years, going back to the original, at least in recent history, break. And I had forgotten, you don't see my cursor. It does not come up. I don't know, Mark, if you have a pointer that could work. I forgot about that. Perfect. If I know how to use it. There we go. So back in 1987, Nauset Beach, we call North Beach in the Chatham portion, extended well down into the Monomoy system, approximately, say here, give or take. 1987, it broke across from the lighthouse. It was somewhat predicted, although the prediction was it was going to break where it had broken back in the mid-1800s. Well, it didn't. It broke here. That caused an immediate, mess, both from an erosion along the shoreline as well as navigation challenges for the fishing fleet and in Chatham Harbor. That break we thought was going to be, quote, the break. Well, 2007, we had another one. That opened up a whole new set of challenges, both in the immediate vicinity of the break, erosion issues along the backside, if you will, internally, but also it changed the entire shoaling area in a very, very heavily utilized, area between the Chatham Harbor, North End, and Pleasant Bay, and Riders Cove, and so forth. So that created a new challenge. And then one of the much more recent issues that, again, I'm sure you're familiar with now, as the North Beach Island has extended, and more importantly, as South Beach has broken away from the mainland, we're now seeing a huge influx of current flow and sediment dealing with Stage Harbor. So all of these, are very difficult to kind of predict the wheres and the whats and deal with it. So anyway, over the course of beginning 20 plus years ago, Chatham embarked on developing certain dredging strategies to deal with these issues as they were showing up. We developed, frankly, a very comprehensive dredging program. We have both small little, town landing areas internally where typically an excavator at the edge of a bulkhead, would just remove a few feet or so around the bulkhead for access to the landing. That's a mechanical work. And then we have the more, kind of common traditional that we're now, seeing more regularly, and that's with the county program, the dredging program, which is a hydraulic pipeline dredge. Those are the much larger quantity type projects. Almost in all cases with our hydraulic work, it's all very good, clean sand, which is a very good thing because that sand is important to utilize for resiliency. We try to use it beneficially in all cases, and we have done, I think, a very good job of maintaining our beaches as best we can when available dredging is made available. So again, to focus on sort of the changes coming up, just a very brief reintroduction to what I think most commissioners are familiar with, and that's the concept of the zone of potential dredging, ZPD. This was unique to Chatham. We were the first community in the Commonwealth to come up with this proposal, and the first time we did it was for the Aunt Lydia's Cove location, where, as I indicated, after the 87 break, the shoaling coming up Chatham Harbor was extensive, and it was essentially almost impossible to predict where the best channel location would be. So we pitched to the agencies, and they were very supportive. What we want to do is not try to force a channel in a particular location, which may increase both the frequency of the times we would need to dredge, but also the quantity of volume to be removed. So instead, we said within this zone, wherever the best natural water system might be, that's where we would like to put in a defined channel of width and depth. That would minimize our work. It wouldn't always be in the same position, but it would, in fact, minimize the impacts to the resources. The agencies understood, because of our system, that that was, a smart idea. So after that one, similarly, got my clickers here. At the time, the Morris Island Cut was concerned to try to maintain access between the Nantucket Sound area and over to, at the time, the Southway. So we developed another one. That was a very dynamic area, and that was our second ZBD. And then our third was the channel, as I described a little bit earlier, where the new 2007 break had occurred, basically the north end of Chatham Harbor up into the Pleasant Bay system, and a small spur channel right near Fox Hill. Again, it was very obvious that those shoals were the direct result of the new inlet, and we actually were able to change the statewide ACEC regulations to allow us to do this, given the dynamic nature of this system. They understood that because it would, normally we wouldn't have been able to dredge, and they recognized that to maintain historical navigation would be very important in this very dynamic system. So, moving forward, those are, again, all existing areas that have been permitted, and what we're now proposing are 3 new additions to the overall program, which is really what I'll be focusing on for most of this presentation. The first one is really a housekeeping situation. It's the area just offshore of 90 Bridge Street. Those, there are 2 permitted areas. There's a maintenance area that is actually already in the townwide permit. We incorporated that a few years ago. But then just recently, you may recall, with the whole redevelopment of 90 Bridge Street and the proposal for the new upweller system with floats, we have to do some improvement dredging to make that system work. So the improvement dredging already has permits for the dredging as within the 90 Bridge Street permit group, if you will. So what we're asking for is to move that permit into the comprehensive as a maintenance moving forward. Again, just to keep all our dredging permits under one umbrella. The next one is a fairly complicated one and a fairly large one. Chatham Harbor, another example where we're going to be proposing a ZPD, so potentially ZPD, for essentially almost the entirety of Chatham Harbor, and I'll get into that in a second. No, we're not planning to dredge all of Chatham Harbor, absolutely, but I don't know where the channel will need to be 10 years in the future. Given the dynamic system that's in play out there and the deterioration of North Beach and North Beach Island, it's anybody's guess what the future conditions will be. Similarly, but a much smaller scale, we're going to be doing a minor modification, if you will, to the Stage Harbor entrance channel. Again, with all the pressures that are occurring out there, traditionally, we have had only the original defined channel limit that was part of the core, the federal channel authorization. But as things have changed, the Corps has even all on their own started migrating their dredging to get to the good water in an easier fashion, and we are trying to mimic that same approach. We don't want to have to dredge areas that we don't need to dredge, and let's try to focus on getting to where we need to get in the most efficient manner. And then the last one that's a new addition is a somewhat unique, novel approach where we're actually proposing to remove material in one of the Corps of Engineers disposal sites that they utilize for the hopper dredge offshore of Hardings Beach. The goal here is to use that sand in a beneficial manner, maintain capacity to the disposal site, and put that sand as best as possible back onto the beach through hydraulic dredging with a pipeline, as we typically do. The other component of our whole program is obviously where to put material once you dredge it. So we have a, comprehensive, set of locations. Again, many of these are small interior town landings, small beaches, Oyster Pond Beach as an example. We take the clean sand occasionally from our sites, and then we truck haul it to those locations and maintain, the area as best we can for erosion protection. In addition, we have sites, for obvious reasons again, when we're doing pipeline dredging work where we have to pump to a beach and use it as direct beach nourishment. Been a very effective program, and we're not really making many changes town-wide to that. This proposal only includes really 2 new sites, one of which is an existing one. The first one is Linnell Lane, more or less opposite the new inlet, the north inlet, just south of Minister's Point. It's an existing area. It has undergone a gross amount of changes over the last few years as the inlet has migrated and is now exposed to direct ocean energy. So we're looking to expand the existing footprint to basically go between sort of the north end, just below the hardened portions of Minister's Point, to the southern end where there's another existing revetment. It's all now a natural sandy beach, and we're looking to make that zone part of the disposal area as well, the whole zone. The other one is a site that had been traditionally used for nourishment, Turn Island. We have not used that in a number of years, but it was heavily used early on after the 87 scenarios, both mechanically, when the town was just sort of frantically trying to use an excavator to move material. And then the Corps of Engineers came in and did their initial federal project and pumped the sand up onto Turn Island. So we're looking to, expand and restore, if you will, Turn Island. I'll get into that in a little bit. The only other change is not an addition, it's actually a deletion. We had a site which was just off the 87 break, which is no longer opposite that break. I mean, the south inlet has migrated well to the south, so that existing site, which was really for the purpose of the Corps of Engineers to utilize as part of their dredging program, and that we would use if we ever needed a place to put material in the nearshore environment. But that site's just not really viable, so we're just going to remove it from the permits at this point. So I'm really, as I indicated, only going to touch on the new additions to the program. But again, if any member has any questions on any of the sites, I'm happy to get into those as well. So, again, 90 Bridge Street, really a housekeeping issue. The crosshatched zone is already in the townwide permit, as I indicated. What we're looking to do is now include what is permitted as an improvement dredging That will be done, and I'm actually hoping to do that maybe next fall or winter as part of the overall redevelopment of Bridge Street. But I'd like to include that zone or that location into the townwide permit as a future maintenance. Just again, keep them all together. Again, mostly a housekeeping chore. And then the Chatham Harbor one. I just throw this up if people have seen presentations, you know, you've seen this sort of diagram of how the outer beach has changed so dramatically, particularly North Beach Island after the North Inlet occurred. And the changes both substantially at the north end as, you know, the north tip has eroded. You know, everyone, quote, is still expecting that the North Inlet will become the dominant inlet. Essentially, it already is. It has not migrated perhaps as fast as some of us thought it might, but it is moving. And as it moves, the area of sort of influence that it has is going to move with it. At the same time, North Beach Island is getting skinnier and skinnier. We don't know what that means. Is it just going to fall apart, overwash in certain areas? It's not like we're going to have another big inlet somewhere and that will become the new inlet. It's more like it will just sort of degrade, is what our anticipation is. And as it degrades, we're fully expecting that the channel situation inside Chatham Harbor will become difficult. We expect, again, that the North Inlet will be the primary inlet for navigation. We don't know how much longer the South Inlet will serve as a viable navigation outlet to the ocean. Here, our primary concern is the fishing fleet at the fish pier. We are unfortunately at the south side of what is likely to be or is the dominant inlet, but getting from the fish pier up to the channels in there is difficult. And this photo's from 22 last year. Recent arrows I've gotten, it's gotten worse. So the point being, we realize that to try to pick a particular spot, as the commission may recall, once in 2018, once things sort of changed dramatically, we tried to get an emergency dredging in one location, and by the time dealing with other issues associated with that, all of a sudden the area that we had predicted where we wanted to dredge was in deep water, and the problem had moved. So it was a waste of time. So instead of trying to pick these little spots, we said, why not just go for a full-blown, essentially everywhere in Chatham Harbor? We obviously have very stringent restrictions. You know, we can't dig through existing eelgrass beds, certain distance from, you know, intertidal flats. All of those are conditions that we would adhere to as we have already with all these zones. This project has been through a MEPA process, and the agencies understand and have accepted that, you know, we can move into the permitting process. So this is in essence the outline. The little jog here is because this is the existing Aunt Lydia's Cove dredging area, permanent area. So we're trying to define a new zone, essentially Chatham Harbor, down through Watch Hill. We decided not to go much further because at this point we don't really see the need for that. That may change. So you're seeing a very large zone, and again, only to provide the opportunity to make a channel somewhere in that area when and if it's necessary. Our other current nightmare is the Stage Harbor system. Again, with the South Inlet now directly opposite Morris Island, and you guys are more than well aware of what issues are happening along the mainland portion of Morris Island. But we're also seeing, now that South Beach is detached, the ocean, which is generally higher in elevation, almost at all phases of the tide, the Nantucket Sound, the flow is from the ocean through here and through the Morris Island Cut area, and with it comes a lot of sand, and here's our channel. This was back in March of '21. That's the county dredge doing the best it can to get from relatively good water, trying to get to relatively good water. And it was a challenge, and is a challenge. There is minor indication that things have slowed, I shouldn't say minor, there are indications that the last couple years, things seem to be slowing down a bit. That's really good news, but it is still a challenge. The county is out there right now trying to get remobilized to continue work in a critical shoal. The weather has not been our friend. But our proposal for moving forward is to essentially keep the primary channel, but in this outer area, we want to be able to work that eastern side where the majority of the shoaling is coming and infilling the channel, and flare it to get to the good water on the other side. So again, the Corps has already been doing it this way, and we just want to mimic essentially their efforts and provide us with an opportunity to, frankly, minimize our dredging to get to the best water and attack the most important portion of the shoal system. And then this one, as I indicated, is sort of interesting. These are the two disposal areas offshore of Harding's Beach. There is the eastern one, western one. To date, the Corps has only utilized the eastern one for pretty obvious reasons. It's closer, and they can get more runs in as long as it's there and it works. Why go any further? So they really put all their material in the eastern one, and they prefer, because it's closer, to the eastern portion of the eastern one. For those that aren't that familiar with how the hopper dredge works, that's the Corps hopper dredge. I believe that's the Currituck. That's been in the shipyard for a couple years. A sister dredge looks identical essentially to it. They both are 150 odd feet. They carry a little over 300 cubic yards. They suck up on two drag arms that they drag on either side like a vacuum cleaner. The sand and water goes into the inner portion like a dump truck. The water flows out, the sand stays, and then they traverse from the channel over here. They go to the pre-designated dump site, and then the hole opens up and the sand drops out. It's a very routine process for hopper dredges. Other hopper dredges, this one does not. The large ocean-going ones have other ways to get sand out of the hopper. They can actually pump it out into a pipeline that they hook up to in the ocean and pump it ashore, and that's what a number of the main beach nourishment projects do along the eastern seaboard. This little dredge has not and does not have that capability. So it's very advantageous for the town to have the Corps do the work because they pay for it, and they can move a lot of sand in a relatively short order. But the sand does not provide any value to the town, if you will, to put up on the beach. So here again is the larger outline of the disposal site. You can sort of see the squiggles here representing a much more, a lot more material underneath or on top of the bottom. Just another picture to kind of show it. So natural bottom would be sort of down here, and what we've designed is the ability to remove what we refer to as overburden, the new material that has been placed there, which is very good, clean sand, and potentially pump that using our own pipeline dredges onto the beaches. It's something that we've sort of been wanting to do for a while. The fact that Stage Harbor has now become somewhat routine, we haven't really needed to go look for sand for beach nourishment purposes. But if our navigation dredging needs, for whatever reason, slow down, the beach erosion issues are not going to slow down. So we would still need to find sources of sand. And there's approximately well over 100,000 yards of material in this site, just sort of screaming out to be reutilized in a beneficial manner. So that's why we're adding it into our program now. I don't see this being something we're going to do in the near term, again, primarily because we still have navigation needs and sources of sand in our channels. Moving to the disposal area enhancements, as I indicated, Linnell Lane, the current permit is really only sort of this northern portion. This whole area has just dramatically changed with the ocean wave energy coming through the inlet. So now we want to include basically this entire portion of the beach as a nourishment potential. We've now used it 3 times. The material admittedly migrates quickly, which frankly is not a bad thing. That material is now providing a very important source of nourishment along the North Chatham shoreline, and it has added substantial resiliency to a number of the properties to the south of this area. So it really is, similar to, if you've heard me reference Cockle Cove, a feeder beach. It's a feeder area that we nourish, and then that feeds the rest of the shoreline of North Chatham, providing resiliency benefits. And then Turn Island. Turn Island is owned by Massachusetts Audubon. As I indicated, it has been utilized for nourishment in the past. Basically, all of this material here and along this elongated area here was elevated by the Corps back in '95. And it is, frankly, it has been eroding for a while, but ever since the '07 break, and in particular after some of the changes over the last, say, 5-6 years, it has really started to change. I just drew a line to sort of give a reference. I just picked 2010 because it was a nice clear picture. And that's 2021. So that northeastern tip, which is directly facing the new inlet, the north inlet, we've lost over 350 feet in that period. And as I indicated, much of that erosion occurred in, say, the last 5 or 6 years as the inlet has changed and has gotten more impacted. I've heard from, property owners along the mainland. I mean, Turn Island is very important for a number of reasons. It's good bird habitat. Mass Audubon is very pleased that it exists as a bird sanctuary. The fishing fleet is very happy it exists because it shelters the fishing fleet. And property owners behind it are very happy because it shelters them from erosion. So the goal here is to enhance, restore, say, the northeast side. We have spoken with Mass Audubon. They are very supportive of our efforts to try to, maintain this. Their interest is, maintaining the island in general. They don't want to see it erode away. But they're also very cognizant that our nourishment will provide some additional habitat. We have, we're not going to do this, in one round. We would be coordinating with them, each time that we may put material there to make sure we're putting it in a fashion that, meets their needs, so that we don't just, pile a bunch of sand that doesn't really provide them any value. But they understand that, trying to maintain that northeastern, area is very important to, provide resiliency to the island, provide habitat, and resiliency to the, the town's interests of the fishing fleet and the mainland. And even though there are hundreds of more pages, that's all I have for the new stuff that's part of our permit. I do have our permitting specialist consultant on the call, Brad Saunders. I'm sure he can respond to, more technical questions for particular ones or locations, or throw up a picture if there's a site that you'd like to see in more detail.
Anyone have any questions right now?
I have one
Okay, you have one question. All
that
right.
may not be something you can answer or name how to you it, but are there any other options to keeping Stage Harbor open than just continuing to dredge? Or any options considered?
Yes. And we're working on that, you know, as we speak, if you will. It probably will still be in concert with dredging. I don't see the need for dredging to, quote, disappear. Even when, prior to the current challenges, Stage Harbor needed to be dredged. So that won't go away. But we are working through a coastal zone management grant, looking at placing the structures in the water just to the south and west of Morris Island, right opposite Crescent Beach, which is also eroding. And those structures would be placed in the water to deflect the very strong currents and hopefully move that pressure in a different way, which would reduce the shoaling. So whether or not that project, A, ultimately gets supported at the town level if we want to do it, and whether it may need to be done. I mean, there are lots of changes going out there. It is our anticipation that that type of a project will be temporary because the whole system will change. And we believe, based on the way things used to be, and we think we'll probably go in that same direction, Monomoy may join up with Morris Island again in time, in decades. And then that issue would go away, and then we'd be sort of back to where we were when we'd still need periodic dredging. A long answer to, yes, we'll still need to dredge.
Thank you.
Anyone else? You?
Did we get back, I know were having, email conversations with people from the state. Did we get all of the letters from them that we needed?
No.
Okay.
I actually was not aware that we had received, a letter from Division of Marine Fisheries, as is required. Their comments were essentially what we expected, very similar to, or identical in many fashion to what we already have. We have not got a formal response from Natural Heritage as part of that consultation process, so that is outstanding. So even if there were interest to close this hearing, we would not be able to, at least for that requirement of getting Natural Heritage to weigh in.
Just to be clear, Chair, that's the
All right,
only.
so we have, we
Go
have
ahead.
NHESP, MIPA, and DMF, which we have.
We've gotten the two MIPA approvals, certificates for both the Chatham Harbor process as well as the Stage Harbor, which included the near shore disposal, potential removal of sand from that area. So the two MIPA processes have been completed.
Okay, so just NHESP. All right, thank
Correct.
you.
Just waiting on the one, just to be
Pardon
clear. You're just waiting on the one.
We are waiting on Natural Heritage for
All right,
primarily the quote bird issues of nesting shorebirds.
all right.
Just following on that, Ted, would you expect that there'd be any change in the bird monitoring protocols that have been in place that were?
No, I mean, we already follow the guidelines as is. We're required to.
Yep.
The one thing that is new or different in this round, when we last got the Natural Heritage sort of agreement, they only give a 5-year approval, so we have to renew that, sort of in midstream while our permit is still in place. At the last round, they requested that the next round, meaning now, we had to develop what's referred to as a beach management plan. So it was kind of a new thing for them to ask of this. So we're now having to provide them with additional information of things that, in all honesty, aren't really related to the dredging. But if we're going to build a beach, they want to make sure that trash removal's appropriate. We're not having, events on the property when you shouldn't have, and a number of other things to make sure that we're managing these beaches as we nourish them in the appropriate fashion. So we have sent them a draft plan. as well as, the whole permit for their normal review, and we have not heard back as yet. So I don't have a sense of when we will hear from them. I don't expect substantial changes to our normal bird management, frankly, at all, because we're familiar with it. I don't know if they'll have additional comments on the beach management plan and details, but, that's to be seen.
I wonder if, I'd have to look back at the maps, but on the Linnell Lane site, is that part of where there are nesting concerns? Because I know that parts of that beach have been roped off at various times in the past in a manner that suggests it's the Mass Audubon protocol being followed.
Yes, and we are already.
And you are.
I mean, the nesting that has occurred has been frankly south of where we place material, but nonetheless.
So that's where you're going to be. That's in the new zone.
Correct. It's south of where the current permit is. Notwithstanding, we're still monitoring that. We have had, I think, twice now, a bird set up in that area south of us, immediately south. It's basically the same beach. It doesn't look any different. And we have provided oversight of that. I don't think that area has had much success because it's so low. It does overwash during storm events and big tides. But going forward, I fully expect that we'll have to, more actively manage that with, larger nourishment program.
We've issued several orders of condition for that area. One last year or the year before, I forget, to encourage and facilitate the formation of dunes by the placement of those snow fences, which actually seem to be
working well.
Seem to be working, and then a beach grass planting that just came back in for an RDA to expand that planting area. So how does, when you're using it for disposal, how do we work around existing?
Well, we would try to work outside of where they're doing a lot of stuff. I mean, we would be working, in fact, we just did. The sand fencing at the northern portion, we worked to the water side of that. We did elevate the area just next to the dune to basically further enhance that area. The grass that was planted on properties to the south, we did not bury. We knew that that was coming. We tried to stay, again, east of it. There will be a natural growth, I expect, of grass there if it doesn't just keep overwashing. As I think the commission is aware, we have, by design, placed material on top of grass at times because grass can very, very happily grow through beach grass. American beach grass can grow through, a couple feet or more of sand readily. And it just helps, add to the resiliency. So I guess the short answer is we would definitely be working with any of the homeowners on their own plans. At this point, we don't really have any plans in the permit to build a dune or, add grass or so forth. We're really just providing a sacrificial source of sand in front of, those other activities.
Okay, so as a matter of process, when you are doing activities within any of these potential, these zone areas, do you then provide the agent or the commission with specific plans for where, within that zone, the dredging is going to take place and where the actual disposal will take place? So,
if I understand, in the zone for the dredging component,
right.
Admittedly, not necessarily. I mean, we do coordinate with the shellfish constable all the time to make sure that, where we think we need to dredge is not an area that is vitally critical to her, resource interests. I typically don't tell the agent necessarily that we're going to dredge here versus here when we do our routine, nourishment or dredging in the zone.
What about disposal then?
Disposal, trying to think. I mean, we go to our pre-approved disposal sites. Those aren't really zones per se.
Yeah, they're just large sites, and within that site, you're free to.
I mean, if I'm trying to think of like this existing project at Cockle Cove or at Stage Harbor dredging, this round I wanted to put the material at Cockle Cove. and put at the feeder beach and in front of the public area. Nikki, I don't remember if I coordinate with that, with you specifically, but it was, quote, well-known among staff that that's where we were going this round. Unfortunately, that project, because of a lot of issues, didn't happen, and we're now putting that sand, at Hardings Beach East, because that's as far as we can do it without the booster pump. So I guess I'm dancing around the question that,
Well, what struck me looking at this, at the plan, the description, the outline of the site, the disposal site for Linnell Lane area, looked like it would include the areas where we have orders of condition, where there are activities ongoing there. So to the extent there's an impact on what we have permitted there, we would
right.
want to have notice of that.
And that's a good point. Part of that is fully recognizing, I don't know what that's going to look like next year.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So, I mean, having dealt with it already, what we thought would be, a good layout completely got knocked away by one of the storms, the winter storms a few years ago, and the beach didn't even look like that anymore. I don't know if those dunes that have fencing and/or grass would be there. So we want to have the ability, if the shoreline receded, if the dunes were wiped out, to be able to place material there and then work with the homeowners to, enhance that accordingly. So I didn't want to just stay in front of it, because in front of it may not work.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is that in real time, in the moment that you are deciding that this is the location, would you be willing to give notice to the agent that this is?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so that she
sure.
can let us know that there's
Oh, absolutely.
activity coming up, and depending on whether that stuff is even there or not.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
And obviously, there's a lot of coordination, particularly on these areas, because they're privately owned. We can't do this work if they don't agree for us to do it.
Let me ask you something about that. So if the area is privately owned and the town uses it as a disposal site and hugely increases the size of it, and we've seen that at Linnell, we've seen it at Quitnesset, we've seen it in other places where what was almost gone is now, who owns that? I mean, who owns that sand? Who owns that beach?
And that's not a simple answer.
I didn't think so, but I was wondering whether you had an opinion about it.
Well, by requirement, state permit requirement, there's sort of a hierarchy, which makes sense. If we're doing publicly funded dredging with clean, compatible, beach compatible material, for obvious reasons, the goal would be, let's put it on public resource, public beaches, public needs. Secondarily is, if those needs aren't a need, you can place it on private property under two conditions. If the private entity pays for that material and it makes sense for the town, and town administration and policymakers say, okay, it makes sense to put it there for whatever reason, we can place it there at homeowner expense, property owner expense. If they choose not to pay for it, and we still would like to put it there, and the homeowner wants us to put it there, that's when, you've probably heard this, the strolling easement requirement comes into play. It's still their property, but they now have gifted an easement to the town for the public to be able to stroll along the newly nourished area. So ownership, as I understand it, is still the property owner technically, because they own to the low water line, even though the low water line is now out there.
That's what I was going to say, when that line moves, because of action that the town has taken.
Right.
The the private landowner benefits from that. And
Absolutely.
as an expansion.
And the state, recognizing that, wanted to get value to the public, and that's where the strolling easement, because if you don't know, it's very important to know, you mean everybody has no right to walk along a beach in private property unless you're fishing, fouling, and navigating. If you want to look at the sunset, you're trespassing. Below high tide and above low tide, you're trespassing.
I know. Bring your binoculars, because you're always fouling.
So anyway.
Okay,
so
I'm
the
sorry, that
strolling
was not
easement-
really, that was just a little bit off the question, but as thinking about Linnell, brought that issue up. I have some more, but I'll let somebody else go.
All right. Bob, you have some? Go ahead, I'm still processing.
I thank you for being here, Ted. Who pays for all this? How many million, does the town obviously has a budget for this, and the Army Corps does some of it too, but what is the budget going up? Is the amount of expenses going up over the years?
Yes, yes, and yes. When I first started here, when more or less Aunt Lydia's Cove was the only problem child, having a budget of $100,000, as our dredge budget, usually was good enough. Not anymore. We've got Aunt Lydia's still is a problem, not so the entrance channel getting into the fish pier, but the mooring area behind Turn Island, we've been dredging repeatedly. Pleasant Bay area, that's become problematic. And then Stage Harbor, is very problematic. So our budget has absolutely increased. We have still been maintaining a sort of an annual capital request of $150,000 or so per year. But for the last, I guess this is maybe our 4th year in a row or so, we've asked for supplemental $300,000 as a standalone warrant article to supplement our dredging program. Now, those funds are not just to dredge, they are for the engineering, the permitting, all of the efforts associated with that dredging requirement. At the same time, and this has been a very fortuitous situation, the state has developed over the last few years a new dredging grant program. And we've been very successful. We've now had, I'm losing track of time here, 5 in a row. I'm going for one right now, maybe 2, to supplement. We've been getting $400,000 or $500,000 annually through the state. Interestingly, some of those were when we didn't know if we were going to have to contract out for a private contractor like we did a few years ago, and/or, which we have done in the past, and this is awkward, hire the Corps of Engineers to dredge their project. When they have no money, if their dredge is available, theoretically, we can enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Corps, say, we'll pay for you guys to come and dredge your project. So we've asked for, $400,000 to $500,000 typically through the state. We've gotten awards every time we've requested. It's a 50% match, so it only covers half the overall costs. So again, a long-winded way of saying it's either a town appropriation. Fortunately, we've been getting some grants. Sometimes, as I sort of indicated to Janet, if we do dredging onto a private entity, they will pay for that work. Chatham Bars Inn has done that. We've had private homeowners that didn't want to grant their Strawling easement. They feel they're giving up something that they don't want to give up. If they have the wherewithal, they've bought the dredging, they bought the sand. And that's been, helpful.
And this is because of sea level rise? Things are increasing?
Well, sea level rise contributes to all of this. I mean, even without sea level rise, oceans erode beaches. So it's all of the above.
Yeah.
Are things going to have things increase? Likely. But even if we had a static system, you'd still have erosion and infilling of channel systems.
Okay. And then you have a lot of moving parts. You have eelgrass beds, you have shellfish beds, bird nesting, the whole thing.
Yep.
Who coordinates all that for the different sites, for the dredging sites as well as the deposition of material at beaches and so forth?
Staff. We coordinate, because we have the patchwork quilt of opportunities, we sort of look at what the priority needs are for dredging. Sometimes those are quite obvious. And where the most appropriate disposal sites are for that material. Again, that's somewhat dependent on what kind of dredge you're using. If it's an excavator, you can't put it out on Harding's Beach. So we coordinate that internally with town staff, primarily, again, either the agent just for information purposes or shellfish warden for the shellfish resources. Bird issues, we are sort of good to go until we get into the bird season. And then we have to very closely coordinate with them if we have to actually do work within the bird window, which frankly we're doing now. And we are coordinating closely with, the agencies. We've gotten allowances just now to be able to continue the work at Harding's Beach. And after, hopefully, they finish this, bit of dredging in Stage Harbor, we want to move to Mill Creek. And that required another round of approvals because I'm outside my normal window in order to put sand on Cockle Cove, dredge potentially into the Horseshoe Crab time of year window where we work around the moon tide. So all of this is, closely coordinate with the agencies we need to.
Okay, and just one last question. I know some others have questions. You mentioned that you're going to be disposing more sand around Minister's Point, or just some sites around that?
No sand at Minister's Point, so to speak. That the currents there are just way too rapid. We place it on the northwest side,
Okay,
Scatteree. That's a very viable site. It's been the primary go-to site for the work that we've done in the Pleasant Bay Channel, and then as we just discussed, the other side at Linnell Lane.
okay. And also Ridgevale, that's not, does Cockle Cove take care of Ridgevale?
As a feeding source, we don't directly place at Ridgevale. Ridgevale has absolutely benefited from the west to east migration of sand once we place it at Cockle Cove.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else over here? I have a few, not many. The Army Corps has their own approvals for where they dredge. Is that separate from what we're looking at here?
It took me years to, even though I work for them, years to understand their process. Initially, it's complicated.
Well, I don't need
Well,
a complicated answer.
I'll try to be succinct. The Corps used to not get their own water quality certification from the state. So they would look to the town to get a water quality cert for our own work, as well as work that would, allow them to do work, under the water quality certification. The Corps within the last 6, 7, 8 years, give or take, realized they shouldn't put that, quote, burden or be bound by the conditions that are placed on the town for their federal work, because they have a different calling, if you will. So they go through a different process, an intensive consultation process with all the other agencies in order to get permitted to do their work. So even though we used to permit areas that we knew the Corps was the prime, like the nearshore disposal sites, they're permitted for us to use. We've never used them. We permitted them in order for the Corps to use them. We don't need to do that anymore. I'm including it in this permit because I now want to use one of them as a source for sand.
Well, okay, so just I guess the point of my question was, does this plan and our approval of it presumably affect them?
I didn't,
Does this plan affect the Army Corps in what they can and can't do?
no,
Okay.
no. They would have, we may be able to do something that they may not have in part of their plan, but if we did or didn't do something would not negate their ability to do or not do something.
Okay.
Because they would follow their own process.
Right. Is this intended to be a 10-year plan, just like the one that's expiring? Okay.
Yes.
The zone of potential dredging sounds like a very flexible approach. But it does look like you've cast the net pretty wide.
Yes, we have.
And how big those areas are, and it gives you supreme flexibility. And I think that, I'm personally not troubled by that as long as you do lay out on your plans, are following protocols for protecting interests that are within our jurisdiction, which is, eelgrass,
Right.
shellfish.
No, that's a very important facet to the zone that and it took some time to, have the agencies that are sort of, I don't want to say tunnel vision, it's an inappropriate term, but they're looking at a resource that they want to protect. We don't want to disturb that resource either. We just know, given the dynamic nature of the system, that resource may be under 6 feet of sand as these changes occur. And/or we've got areas that may be 15 feet of water right now. Why are you including that in your dredge area? Because it may be 2 feet in a couple years. So as these changes occur and we sort of see how the natural system sort of morphs, we identify, to get from the best water we have here to the best water there, let's take this route. We're away from eelgrass, we're away from shellfish beds, it's completely different, but this is the best way to go. And that, again, we're not smart enough to know where those channels would be at this point, 10 years into the future.
Right, or even a year in the future, you might,
Absolutely.
it might have changed. So as long as you're looking before you dredge. So what happened, have you ever encountered the eelgrass that you had to dredge? Never had? You've always been able to
We've always gone around it.
go around it, okay.
If there is eelgrass where we would like to go, we don't go there. We go near it, and we have to identify it, and that, in particular, it got tight, in that channel to go up toward Riders Cove at Fox Hill. Soon after the '07 break, as those shoals were developing, what was a modest little channel to get from the inside of, say, Bassing Harbor to the main Pleasant Bay Channel was 2 feet deep, 18 inches deep of new sand that just rolled across the channel, and there were eelgrass, nearby. So we had to find a very refined spot where we could dredge, and it's actually held up better than I expected.
Okay. I assume the day will come when you won't be able to get from here to there without going through eelgrass. And do you have a plan for when that occurs?
I guess which day will come?
One day when you want to dredge in a ZPD and you realize that there's eelgrass between you and where you need to dredge.
I'd never say never. Possibly.
Theoretically,
That's a challenge.
it could happen, right? So I'm just wondering, have you ever thought about, what would you do in that case? Would you,
Go around it.
well, if you can't go around it?
I don't have that answer.
Okay, it's a hypothetical, all right.
Yeah, but isn't that why, given the size of these ZBDs and given the incredible dynamic nature of this whole area, as we always say, it would, notice of where you're proposing to dredge at any given moment would be important for the commission and or the agent to have to make sure. So that each time you're proposing, we're going to dredge in this part of the ZBD, we know where that is. So we will also look and see
Yeah.
if there's any eelgrass
Sure.
that's threatened.
Again, we're required to do that, and if we
Notice it.
do identify it, we have to get in touch with the other agencies as well and so forth. So, that process is already, in play, if you will.
So, right, so all of these things like pre-dredge surveys and monitoring are all part of other approvals that have been provided. And I don't know, because I haven't seen the prior permit, 10-year permit, that the CONSCOM did. I don't know whether it's in that or not, or whether it's appropriate to.
They're in our Chapter 91 Water Quality Search. The Corps has their own, requirements. So all of those, are already laid out in other state and federal permits as well.
Are they referenced in the local permit, in the?
Time of year, obviously,
Yep.
is.
Yep.
Brad, if you know the quick answer, I'm not sure. I know the answer to the specificity of the eelgrass surveys and so forth, whether that's, duplicated at the local permit level, I don't know. We definitely have to do that at the state and federal level.
Yeah, well, I would think should be at least referenced in the local, because that is part of the jurisdiction of this board, so.
Frankly, it would be better if the approvals were the same. So the conditions that are in the water quality certification could be similar to what's in the order of conditions. It would
Correct.
help everybody.
Right, so, right, this order will be built on the prior 10-year order as well as all of the other conditions that have been referenced by other agencies. So it would be,
Presumably right. I mean, we've worked, with past commissions and working on the conditions. Actually, it just jogs my memory when Brad and I discussed yesterday. One thing that we do want to highlight, because it's not clear, let's put it that way. When we get a winter flounder time of year from the state, they just say the dates. We and every other town on the Cape know those dates. But the state has also developed, and they have a whole report on it, that those dates have different components to it. What I'm referring to is the approach channel, like Stage Harbor, out in Nantucket Sound, that's an approach channel. We're not bound by the time of year when we're working on the approach channel, because we're not in a constricted, area where that dredging is perceived to be an impact to the winter flounder spawning process. We can't work in the inlet, the skinny part of the channel, nor can we work in the interior estuarine part, where the spawning, goes, if you will. But as long as we're in the approach channel, we're okay. And that's why, basically every community on the Cape has been able to dredge in this winter period when they're working on the outside Nantucket Sound or Cape Cod Bay portion. So that is something that I'd like to at least acknowledge. If we're working, the time of year is not restricted. We can work on how the language would be when work is occurring in the designated by DMF approach channels.
I don't know who's going to be doing this, but it's going to be complicated, not me.
Not you.
Yeah.
All right.
I have one last,
I was thinking this might be a good group one.
yeah.
Maybe a couple of us get together and.
Yeah, I think that might make sense. One last question of area. So when you're on the dredge side, when you're deepening channels and enlarging channels and working on the sides, that, we know that can lead to increased tidal flows, volume, velocity, and increased sediment transport. I mean,
In very specific situations, and depending on where you're going, I may have a rebuttal.
I'm going with the Stage Harbor entrance channel and anecdotal evidence that I have heard from people about what appears to be an increase in the accretion of very fine sediment in the eelgrass beds, in the salt marsh, in the beach areas, and whether that is as a result of the transport of that sediment, because it's so fine, whether that came from the dredging of the channel. It doesn't, the eelgrass is covered because there is a requirement that that be monitored. And I wondered why salt marshes weren't listed as a resource area connected with the activity.
Well, it is in the sense that we can't dig salt marsh.
Right, but you didn't mention, there's no reference to any of the performance standards for salt marshes in the NOI.
I believe, again, Brad, if you have the numbers, we are required to stay with a certain distance away from identified salt marsh. We don't pump material on the salt marsh, although there may be some value in that, as we know.
There might be some value in that. But, no, right, but this is not a direct impact. This is indirect as a result of the sediment being churned up from a result of the
Yeah.
dredge that makes its way up Oyster River and onto these resource areas.
Given the nature of, at least in our case, the nature of the dredging, its turbidity, the fines that may get stirred is frankly minimal. It's I don't want to say inconsequential, and that's maybe a little bit too strong, but the dredging zone stirs up very little. the disposal zone, you know, maybe more as the slurry comes out, the sand stays where we want it. And there is a modest amount of more turbid water. But again, it's very temporary, and, you know, we've never noticed that having any untoward effects, you know, in the nearby area. I have also heard, and I think it's just, you know, when someone sees a change, they look around to see who to blame. And they like, well, maybe the dredge did it. You know, your comment about deepening channels increases flow, in some cases, absolutely, and frankly, by design. Our Mill Creek project absolutely was for that purpose initially. Mill Creek was almost entirely shut off. The interior system was dying, quote, and we reestablished tidal flow. And you know, Bob Duncanson has made this reference a number of times. If you want to change, say, water quality values, Pleasant Bay, digging a little pencil-thin channel in Chatham Harbor isn't going to do anything. I mean, it's inconsequential. And in many of our dredging situations, that is the case. If we're going to take something that may be at 4 foot deep and going to 6 feet deep, and the whole rest of the harbor is, you know, whatever, you could not even model the change in volume in many cases. So, again, I think the issue is legitimate. I just think you would need to have a real specific situation to be able to sort of, you know, respond to that, you know, intelligently, as saying, well, yeah, there may be some value to that, but I think in general, in the material that we work, it's a very small, you know, likelihood. When you're working in the inner harbors like a Witchmere or something, where the mayonnaise, that's a different scenario. You can't just dig that up and just spew it out, because there is a large turbid cloud associated with that. Not so with our, you know, sandy material.
Okay.
Much different.
Okay. Final question. We were told years ago that outermost harbor channel was going to be added to the comprehensive permit. Whatever happened with that?
Didn't happen.
Okay.
Partly, not that it may not happen. That's really not been a policy discussion internally to see if it makes sense. I see some value in it, but that channel is 98% value to the marina. They accept that. They have approached the town about expanding their footprint out into the larger harbor area as that goes through its changes. I'm not necessarily opposed in concept, but I also don't want to give a false impression that because it's part of our permit, we're now responsible for it. That's a whole different scenario. I mean, that area is so dynamic right now that I don't know what the future holds.
No one does. Okay, thank you very much.
Just, since Janet brought it up, there are public resources docked there, aren't there?
Yeah, and again, 98% is maybe an overstatement. There is absolutely value in maintaining that channel, public value. There's value in maintaining a marina, even though it's private, publicly. It's an important resource. There are, I think Coast Guard still maintains a small boat potentially there. There is a small mooring basin internally. So I don't want to suggest that it's not an important channel. It is. Whether or not it's important enough for the town to take on that expense, that's a different discussion. We have utilized the county dredge in their permit. In other words, they have a permit for it. So if we wanted to dredge there, presumably we could within their permit. You know, they have paid the town to bring the county dredge in there, you know, a number of years ago. So, I mean, there is still opportunities to have a partnership, you know, to maintain that channel to some extent.
Okay. So, where are we? We, to my recollection, haven't asked for changes here. We know that we have to wait on a letter. How will we, I have one more question. You mentioned Audubon, and they're all for it, Turn Island.
Right. I mean, as long as we
Have they,
coordinate with them about where's and what's and hows
Yeah.
and so forth, but they are very supportive that we've, kind of
Good.
looked at their island again as a resource for us.
just from a procedural perspective, do you have a letter of anything in writing from them saying, yeah, we want turn out to be
No.
a nourishment?
No, but that would not be unlike a number of our sites. We have lots of private property under sort of our permit umbrella. We could never use it unless we get authorization from those property owners in order to do the work. And Turn Island would be a similar situation. They would have to agree for us to place material there. The whole strolling easement got, interesting discussions, whether they would, need to grant it and/or want to grant it is a different, is a discussion. But if they did not want us to do it, we wouldn't be able to do it, just like any other.
Right, I'm just asking from a procedural perspective, do we want to have those endorsements on file with the application? I guess I'm asking the commission.
My only response is, again, in the past, we have not done that because we can't do the work unless we get those authorizations. So it's been
Right.
when and if that need arose, that's when we would get the authorizations.
Right. So how do we handle when you come back? How do we handle, I'm sorry, my voice is not, how do we, I'll ask you, Nikki, and you, Ted, how do we continue to a date certain if we're simply waiting on a letter that we don't know when it's coming?
I missed the which letter,
The letter from National Heritage?
Natural Heritage. I don't know how to answer that. I hoped, because we provided the information they were looking for a while ago. I hope we will get some response from them in the near future.
Okay.
So other than
What would
checking
you-
with them, see where they are, I don't know how to answer that, because I just don't. And I don't know, pardon me, whether their comments to the beach management plan, independent of their normal review of, bird monitoring and so forth, will require a little bit back and forth and add time. And if that is the case, we're just going to have to, continue until, we have.
Just keep continuing until you have something.
Correct.
While I'm thinking about it, there aren't very many people online, but if anyone has any comments on this proposal, this would be the time to raise your virtual hand and make them. Or *6 if you're on the phone and speak. All right, sounds like we don't have any.
So my suggestion as far as timeline was, my first question is, are we looking for, other than the letter from NHESP, are we looking to continue for an order of conditions? Or are we continuing to possibly discuss a little more? So if we want to discuss anything else further, I would say 4/26. If we're wanting the order of conditions, I would say the first one in May.
I don't,
Third, that's,
I think we're ready.
And then
for
they can
early
continue
additions.
if,
I don't see I don't see anyone hankering for a further discussion of this. We've had a pretty good talk and presentation. And we have no
so I
comments.
think May would give us, the first one in May would give us a good chance to coordinate maybe two commissioners and myself to work together on drafting an order. I'd like to be involved. I haven't really done any of these types of dredge permits. So I would like some help from someone who has, is basically what I'm saying. So, but that gives us a little time, because next week I can't do it. It's spring vacation. So that would give us a little time to get us, to coordinate a schedule between the people that would be interested in, maybe drafting this.
Nikki, do you have a current digital copy of the existing permit? My
Yeah.
digital stuff is so all over the place. I'm not sure if I do have one that's completely digital that we could edit or
Yeah.
not, so I can look into that.
Nikki,
But
I'm
Brad
trying
I
to,
has-
could provide it to you if you want.
Nikki, I'm trying to remember, the last kind of big one, if you will, was when we included the Pleasant Bay ZPD. And BB at the time was working with us to try to develop that, and that was all digital. Well, I don't know if that helps, but, we can, help as best we can also.
Yeah, we can provide a PDF. We obviously don't have the Word document.
Of the previous
Yeah,
one.
see, I don't even have Word documents of our actual regulations, so I've had a hard time
So I
finding.
can send you a
that
PDF
kind of
of the previous approval.
Yeah,
Okay.
That'd be helpful,
yeah.
to have the PDF.
Nikki, so you're proposing that we do this first Wednesday of May.
That's in 2 weeks.
That's I also just want to remind everybody, that's our time constrained Monday, or Wednesday.
We go, say May 10th. I just don't think we
What-
can do it in 2 weeks.
What are your timeframes?
I'd-
When are you
your-
going to start?
Your first step, in a
Oh,
sense.
there are many
You're the
steps.
You're the local, permitting process.
So we're not holding anything up.
No. The holdup will be the federal permit. That's become a black hole abyss, unfortunately.
Yeah, so maybe the second Wednesday?
Brad, speak up if you, I don't know the natural heritage side of this. I would hope we would have, their input by then. Then there would be technically nothing that I could think of that would be in our way.
Right. But that'll give us a little more time, since apparently we're going to do a collaborative development of the order conditions, more time to do that. It's going to be, usually it's one person who works on it, so. I'm proposing,
I
and
don't have an opinion. Brad, do you have, you're suggesting the second Wednesday,
I am, for other reasons.
Second Wednesday of what?
May?
May 10th.
May.
Of May?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, we don't know when Natural Heritage
Right.
will respond.
Well, that's fine. We,
Kind of indicated to us early on they were going to work on it quickly, but
well, we could be,
So we could,
Put that as a
yeah, we could
special.
fully draft it, and if we have to continue for one more week to
That's
Yeah.
fine.
either edit to add some conditions from NHESP, or if we just have to continue it until they give us their letter, that way it can at least be drafted for the majority, and then if we
Right.
have to change a few things, then that'll be easy. So I think we should try and do the brunt of the work for May 10th, and then continue as needed.
Yeah, and I'd like to work on those conditions as soon as possible, frankly. Just to get that sort of coordinated.
sure. All right, so May 10th it is.
Make a motion that we continue. Let's see, where are we? Various locations for the comprehensive dredging and disposal program for the town of Chatham till May 10th, 2023, for an order of conditions.
Gordon, second?
Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right, well, thank you, Ted, and
Thank you.
looks like we'll get there.
thank you.
Thank you. Brad.
Right. All right. Up to 2 hours, but we only have three just enforcement orders left, so.
Plus the field change.
So
right.
306 Hardings Beach Road, I'm gonna open that one. I heard from Teresa. I sent her an email. She happened to be off Cape. So we're just gonna continue that until 4/26. So I'll open the field change, 306 Hardings Beach Road. Dan and Julie McLaughlin, map 8B, parcel 10, SE 103528. Use of the sand excavated from the pool to fill in an odd depression in the buffer zone. Request to continue to 4/26. I just want to add that if anyone wants to individually send me any comments or questions, and I can pass them on to Teresa so that she has a heads up and can answer them. If you want to do that, feel free. But otherwise, we're just looking for a continuance to 4/26.
Make a motion that we continue 306 Hardings Beach Road to April 26, 2023.
Gordon, second.
Roll call vote, Cheryl.
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And I vote aye. A lot of echoes going there.
All right, next we have the notice of intent for 448 Old Harbor Road, Michael and Elizabeth Riley, map 16G, parcel K3, SE10 3620, addition to a single-family dwelling within the buffer zone to a coastal bank. So David Clark, if you're available, go ahead.
Actually, I thought this was being continued, so that's why I wrote on the,
Oh, he sent me an email saying, and I don't know why I'm have an echo, but it looks like he's here, but he sent. So ZBA is scheduled for, so this email came in at 2. So ZBA is scheduled for May. Oh, I guess he probably left. I think maybe his screen just is frozen and it thinks that he's still on. ZBA scheduled for the end of May for Old Harbor, so continue to 426 or push it off to June 7th.
Why does ZBA involve in an enforcement?
this is not, this is 40 Old Harbor.
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped down to the next.
Dave doesn't have a preference, Nikki?
No, so it would be us listening to the presentation on 426 and giving any comments we have, and then continuing it for an order until after it's heard from ZBA in May, or just straight out continue it until, and never hear anything until after ZBA has been heard, and do everything on June 7th.
I always prefer that because of my former rants about
Yes.
let's just let ZBA have their way until we start working.
Yeah, that's fine. He didn't care either way. So it's like June.
Make a motion that we continue 448 Old Harbor Road to June 7th, 2023.
Gordon, second.
Roll call vote, Cheryl.
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Okay, now we're on.
Your time has
Next
come.
we have the. Next is the enforcement order for 93 Orleans Road, William and Carmel Ferguson, map 15H, parcel 114, unauthorized tree and vegetation removal in conservation jurisdiction.
Good
So I
afternoon.
see Bill.
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Oh, yep, and there's Paul, or Phil, sorry.
Phil Cheney, landscape designer, here on behalf of Mr. Ferguson. You've received a new plan that meets, I believe, what we discussed last time would be your preferred solution to restoring the area that was damaged. We've condensed the mitigation plantings into the lower part of the lawn, so we've got a denser, thicker area of trees and shrubs. And we've incorporated a mow strip behind that, so we have a way of, minimizing the intrusion of the invasives into that area. Additionally, I did include another tree just to make the math work, so we're no longer wrong there. And for some particular reason, I chose an oak for that tree.
Good choice.
Randomly. Okay. I think everything else is pretty much according to what you're looking for, unless you have any questions.
All right. Do we have any questions? Does anyone have any questions?
I got a question.
Okay, Bob.
The workshop / shed, the bigger of the two, that's going to remain
Yes.
on site. It looks like the foundation has been shored up with some concrete block lately, and some debris has been kind of scattered towards the back into the NDZ. Will that be cleaned up?
We have a note on the plan now to just remove old trash in that area. If there's any new trash that's deposited in there as well, we would include that. And yes, perhaps I forgot to mention most of all that the small shed is being removed as
Right.
part of this plan.
There's also, on the, eastern property line, a large, sycamore maple or Norway maple.
Right,
And there's a branch that's been cut off and leaning well, it broke off and it's leaning up against the tree now. Will that be removed as well?
I think that would be reasonable, as far as all that work is doing, to take a broken branch like that. I didn't see it particular.
Okay, and the erosion control is holding up next to the structure? Is that helping?
The existing?
Yeah.
I haven't looked at it in a little while, so I can't really vouch for that right now.
Well, when I was
I didn't
there-
notice any problem before.
When I was there, it didn't look very robust, I must say.
That's, you know.
I saw sand eroding down the bank pretty vigorously.
Okay,
If you wouldn't mind looking at that.
okay, yep. And Mr. Ferguson, you're following what you're talking about there?
I think he's muted.
I saw a nod at least.
It may be different now, but when I looked at it several weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm taking good notes and we'll address that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of brush along that line,
Yep.
that will be removed.
Yes, I do have, a note on there to remove, the brush pile in there. This one particular good-sized one, I'm sure there's some random pieces in there, and that's easy to see.
Yeah, and
once you
along
get
the
going.
whole edge, there's some,
Sure,
has to be cleaned up.
yep.
And what do you think the time frame is for the planting to occur, Phil?
It could begin any time at this point. We're entering the planting season now. I don't know what Mr. Ferguson's, plans are as far as contractors at this point.
Yeah, I'm ready to go on Phil's recommendation. And so
Yep,
I'll go on Phil's advice and we can start rather quickly.
yep. We're at that point now where we can start at any time, so.
And
we're
just
in the-
temporary irrigation, nothing permanent, within the buffer zone?
Understood? Yep.
I don't know if that could be included on the plan.
On the plan, I do have the note underneath the plan schedule that no permanent in-ground irrigation is proposed.
Okay.
And.
Oh, I see it now, yeah.
Okay. I try to hide those things, just to,
Don't say that.
just to make sure everybody's reading everything in the plan. I'm very insecure.
Missed it.
So only permanent irrigation will be allowed outside the 100-foot.
Correct. Yeah, which would be just some of the front yard area, should you choose to do that.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else? Thank you for removing that small shed. That's good. Getting it out of the NDZ. Since the plantings now are massed, as we asked, concentrated mostly in the NDZ, except for some trees, it seems desirable to me, let's see what everybody else thinks, to have some sort of demarcation in front of it, denoting that is protected area. I didn't think it was feasible before because it was stretched out so far.
Right. Again, I mean, you can certainly call for something there. When the kind of robust shrubbery we're talking about here, I usually find that that's a little superfluous because these are not, puny little plants that are growing on like are preserving a view or anything like that. These are more robust. So it's going to be a pretty strong thicket edge. If you wanted to do the one rail fence or something, that could, but we do want to make sure it's clear that the mow strip is accessible, so.
Right, yeah, I would like to see the strip, the fence, single rail fence, because we're thinking long-term here. This is all put in because of a violation. And properties change hands, And over time, people forget what that is all about there. So I think in the way it's structured now, it lends itself to demarcation such as a single rail fence. So I would like to see one there.
Is that something you would like added to the plan, or is that something that I don't know, I'm not sure what comes out.
I think it's a good
from-
idea myself, too.
Yeah.
So let me ask, what accompanies this plan as an order? How does the plan get effectuated? Nikki, do we issue a standard, I mean, we've developed a restoration order, it's called, where violations have resulted in the need for, more complicated solutions than just, whatever, plant one tree, something like this. And it's based on an order of conditions, so it has a lot of those kinds of conditions in it about demarcating if necessary. So, I mean, it's hard to do that on a one-page enforcement order that says, do the plan. So we could do that. It's lengthier, but it's more comprehensive. But I leave it to the agent
So I
to.
was going to ask that question as well, what exactly we wanted to do, if we wanted to do the enforcement or the restoration order. As you know, there's been trouble sometimes getting them recorded, especially if it was a land court property. I'm not sure if this one is. But yeah, so it's kind of logistically, it's a little hard for these restoration orders if the well, so we can issue the, sorry, I've been thinking about this. We can issue the restoration order. Whether or not it's recorded, we can't really control, but we would at least have it in our file and it would be attached to the existing enforcement order.
Yeah. To be honest, the recording requirement was sort of belt and suspenders, just to ensure that subsequent owners of the property had actual notice. But, it's not absolutely necessary.
Right. So I think for now we can draft the restoration order because I think it's good to have everything spelled out just like it would be with an order of conditions. I don't particularly care either way if they tried to record it or not. And then just keep it on the radar that if it's not completed by this date, then, further action will happen.
Seems like a sensible approach.
Gives it a little bit more teeth.
Yeah, just as long as it's on record, that's the important thing.
Right, that just means that we would need to continue it to another hearing to approve and issue the restoration order.
Yeah, so this one I think could go on 4/26 just to say, give it some teeth about what kind of timeline we want, say, how many years we want the plantings and all that kind of stuff. Because like you said, it's hard to get all that into an enforcement order, the one-page thing. So I think this one should be simple enough because it's just replanting and a timeline kind of thing with some normal general conditions about irrigation and things. So I think 4/26 would be fine.
Okay. And so, Phil, can we assume that you'll update the
Sure,
plan?
I can certainly add a fence line to that there. Do you want the hard copies as well, or just
I'm a digital guy
PDF?
myself, so I
Okay,
don't
all
know.
right.
I think if it's just the demarcation, a digital copy would be
Okay.
fine for
Very
the
good.
commission, and then 2 copies just to put back in our file.
Gotcha.
And you and Bill can discuss this. If the commission doesn't have a problem, it can be a fence, it can be some sort of steel edging that keeps people from mowing, rocks, large boulders. So it can be a variety of different things. So whatever Bill would prefer to look at in his backyard.
I personally like the idea of the single rail fence because we really want to reinforce the notion, I think, that this
Okay,
is there for a reason.
all right. Very good, and yes, Nikki, perhaps I'll check in with you just to discuss how the order's going in there may be necessary. I mean, so I'm aware if we have any particular need for me to be back.
I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, so it'll be just kind of like our normal
Sure.
NOI process where we issue the order of conditions, and if you have comments on it,
Right.
let us know, and if you don't, just shoot me an email saying I have no comments on this.
Exactly, yeah, if I can just receive that before that date, that would be great.
Yep, no problem.
All right, so we're going to continue to April
426.
26, yep.
Make a motion that we continue 93 Orleans Road to April 26, 2023.
Gordon, second.
Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Karen?
Hi.
And I vote aye. Thank you both.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, the next two, enforcement order 65 Geranium Drive, Elaine Dixon, map 8D, parcel 16R2A, unauthorized vegetation removal and tree topping and conservation jurisdiction. I'm going to open the second one as well because I don't think we have any representatives for this one at this point. This is kind of just logistical stuff and, giving them dates of when we want them to appear and things like that. So then 77 Geranium Drive, the Lawrence P. Capodalupo Revocable Trust, map 8D, parcel 17R2, unauthorized vegetation removal and tree topping and conservation jurisdiction. So these were caught a few weeks ago from an email or phone call from someone. I think a lot of you went out there and saw the properties. So basically right now, all we want to do is get permission from the commission to ratify an enforcement order. We haven't filled out the details of it yet, so I don't have one to show you, because that's kind of what we're discussing here. But if we ratify it today with the conditions that, as far as timeline, and if you want people present at a future hearing, then we can go ahead and send it out. I'm thinking fall for the actual work to be done, because these people are going to need to find someone that is free to do the work. So that's just not going to happen this spring. And I think that's really about all I have. So it would basically be issuing the enforcement order, having them come. Basically what I need to know is when you want them to come before us with a plan and when the work should be done, which is, again, is difficult because we don't know how soon they're actually going to be able to find one at this point in the season.
Nikki, did you ever find out who did the work, the recent one?
I have not. So that's another thing. So Bob Duncanson says if we find out who did the work, go ahead and find them if we want to. Or we can find the homeowners because it's overall their responsibility, or we can say hold off on fines unless they start to not comply. I kind of usually like to, it depends on the violation. If you really think they did this on accident, the homeowners, I think, in my opinion, the landscapers should know. But if we think the homeowners didn't really realize that they were in violation, I do like to hold off on the fine until they either become uncooperative or we just aren't getting anywhere with them. So I like to try and give people the benefit of the doubt for at least a little bit.
Can we?
So yeah, it's kind of just send out the official enforcement order. I need to know if you want to fine or hold off, and then any timelines we're kind of looking for. Do we want them to come before us right away and explain themselves, or do we want them to have, 60 days or so to contract someone to, so that it's not much of a point for them to come before us and say, sorry, I did this. So give them a couple months to officially get a, contract with a, professional restoration person.
Yeah, that sounds, we don't need to specify when the work itself is completed. But it does seem like a reasonable amount of time to me, a couple months, to show us a plan. My question is whether or not the restoration specialist would need to appear before us before then to sort of figure out, for us to figure out where they're coming from and for them to figure out what we would like to see. So if they were just to show up in 2 months cold with a restoration plan, I just don't know how, I don't know what that would, it could look like many different things.
Right, so I guess with that, we will be issuing a cover letter with the enforcement orders, because those have not gone out yet. So that can, I don't know if you have anything specific in mind that you want to see right now, other than,
Yeah, I don't know if I do.
Conditions, but
The cutting was extensive on both properties, and at least on one of the properties, it looks like it may have been going on for a while. So the restoration could be, complicated. This is not a simple site. I went out again recently and took pictures. There's a lot of trees that were cut nose high, which I don't understand why they were cut that way unless the intent was to kill them. But nevertheless.
yeah, generally if you leave them up to your chest or so, they die and don't resprout, like if you would flush cut them.
So that apparently was the goal, and so.
Does the enforcement order give the owner the opportunity to come before us and give their plan for restitution? Or what?
Well,
Yes, generally. I mean, if we have specific things that we want, say they completely clear cut it and we would just say, revegetate, come to us with a plan. But this one, they didn't exactly clear cut, but I mean, they basically might as well have. I did get a outside opinion off the record, just a brief, 5-second look to see if they thought any of those would grow back in a good form and be viable trees again. And the general consensus was probably not. So it's looking kind of like flush cut, replant. But I guess we can kind of get to that when they actually have someone contracted to do the work, because, we have our people that we trust and, that kind of thing.
Well, isn't
versus
that,
just,
sorry, isn't that
Oh,
what we
no,
just
go
did
ahead.
with this last one, is we had them
Yeah.
come in and say, we hired somebody, and we're like, okay, now you've hired.
Bill
somebody,
brought the
a couple
plan,
steps.
and then we talked about it, yeah. It's
So
the
we
same
want them,
process.
we kind of want it to be a couple steps, that you hire a person to do the plan, and they talk to us.
Before they
Yeah.
finish the plan, right.
Yeah, is that they can
'Cause
provide
that's
a draft
exactly
plan.
what we just
and-
did with.
It
last
is,
time.
it is. So,
I mean, can we put a date, though, in the letter
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
that we
Within a
want
month,
you,
you've hired
we're
them.
expecting you to appear at,
Yeah. within a
June
month.
1st or whatever with
Yeah.
your contractor to explain yourself, or,
Well, or the,
or,
I'm not even sure at this point it matters
Yeah.
to explain yourself, because it speaks for itself, really.
we
right,
just
or
want to
you
find out.
explain your plan to restitute.
Explain the,
That's,
Sorry.
that's,
Yeah.
so,
couldn't the enforcement order also require the homeowner to identify the contractor who did the work?
Yes.
What you think, because I'm really
Why not?
curious, or, I mean, either it's a relative that they just had do it, a grandson that you would never give up, is just my,
Maybe, yeah.
or why would you not identify the contractor?
We just had work done at our yard, and the first thing the guy said is, do you have permits for that?
Yeah,
Yes, we do.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they asked us, we didn't have to.
wow.
He knew.
Well, they're supposed, that's the protocol, that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Right, so
Anyway,
we're looking for, just bring it all back, we're looking to ratify an enforcement order.
we have to issue an enforcement.
Yes, ratify and issue an enforcement order. It'll take them, as we know around here, 2 months at least to find and contract with somebody. But in the enforcement order, I think we can say you have 2 months to hire someone. But as soon as you have someone on contract, they should appear before the commission to discuss the parameters of the restoration before the restoration plan is developed.
Or do we want a letter just to the agent that you've hired somebody, and she like somehow they make a contact with Nikki as opposed to come to us to start with.
Yeah, notify us that the contract has been
Yeah.
signed. However,
And then
So
visit
I know
the
with a
site
few
with Nikki
people
or
in the past,
something.
a few people in the past like homeowners have said, oh, I hired whoever. And so then I will contact that
Yeah.
company and make sure that they do have an actual contract, because sometimes they're like, no, I mean, we talked about it, but we haven't made anything official, so. So that's usually what I do, is contact the company unless the homeowner gives me an actual contract or something like that. So I do due diligence on that end to make sure that all three parties, the violator, the commission, and the restoration people, are all on the same page, and we all know that someone's been hired. And so as long as there's due diligence that they are working on it, then I usually somewhat lenient to a point.
but there is a potential complication here. Then, okay, I signed a contract with a landscaper, and then they show up and they give us a plan that's wholly inadequate. And so then the landscaper says, not a restoration specialist perhaps, says, well, for the money that I have this contract for, there's no way that's going to cover it. So, all those sorts of things can happen. But we have to start somewhere. I'm saying it twice.
But does the letter you're sending out, the enforcement letter, though, give a date saying that within 60 days you need to contact, me, meaning you, with the contractor that you have hired to restore the property? And
Yep, generally we say within 60 days, you need to tell us that you've hired someone. They need to, show that they're working on some sort of plan, or give some sort of timeline of when they'll have a plan for us to view. And then
Right.
I let the commission know, and you vote to say we give them until September 1st to give us an exact plan, and give them till November, the end of, or middle of November, to get all the plantings in, or, wait till the next spring if that's their timeline.
3 years.
Okay.
Can we do 45 days? I mean, if we're talking about November before plans get, can we say you have to have somebody hired 45 days?
45 days? Do I hear
You're not-
40? Do I hear?
You're not doing work yet. You have 45
Because we've
days.
already wasted a week.
Then you have 45 days until you have to give us a plan, and then we're at least looking at a planting season.
Sure.
Right, we're probably looking at spring planting at the.
I know, that's why if we can get this done, if we can get them to September, can be
Yeah,
planted
if we can at least
September.
get a name by 45 days, then.
No, so I'm thinking more around June, they need to come with an update and hopefully have someone contracted, and then that contractor can tell us when they think the work can be done. So
Right.
either
Yeah.
the September timeframe, September through beginning of November, is like the edge of the planting season, or do they need to wait? They're too busy, they need to wait till spring, and then we give them the approval that the plantings are done in spring, and, then we have the growing seasons and such.
Can we say in this letter that they need to hire a restoration specialist?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we could say that they have to hire someone. I guess we could say a restoration specialist that will ultimately be approved by the commission. So if it's someone we're familiar with, then we're good to approve. If it's someone, that they have used on an off-Cape property or something, and they want them to come in, then that's when it would be, a resume, some examples of the work they've done for approval. But no, it's not just, your friendly neighborhood landscaper necessarily doing the work, because all these trees are going to have to be, evaluated to see if we can flush cut them and they'll come back, or if they just need to be completely removed. So we do need, some decent evaluation of each plant.
So you can say in it, restoration specialist.
Yes, I mean, I'll word it somewhere along the lines of restoration specialist, or someone with, ample qualifications to do this type of work.
Oh, Karen has her hand. Okay, I'm sorry. Karen, you want to say something?
Well, I'm curious because most of our discussion has really been centered around 65, who's recently done it. And has anyone contacted 77 so that they know that this is happening? And if so, were they willing to give up who did their work and when it was done? And since 77 doesn't seem to be a full-time resident, is there a possibility they're going to want a different timeline? Because they can't keep an eye on it. Let's say they're only here in the summer, they can't keep an eye on it in the fall.
Theirs was done a while ago.
Well, then they can
Yeah,
negotiate
so-
with us.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it in our
I'm not
timeframe.
sure if, 65 definitely knows. And Paul is going to hand deliver the enforcement order and go over everything with her and, you know, calm her down that we're not evil and going to take her house away from her or anything like that. But for 77, because they are off Cape, so I don't know if they even know about this because we haven't sent the certified enforcement order yet.
Right.
Because we don't really have phone number. We can't, sometimes we can find a phone number, but it's not like it's in the assessing database, like the mailing address. There's no phone numbers there to call. So they'll probably get it in the mail. And then usually the office side of things deals with them when they first get it and start freaking out and that kind of thing. So they will probably end up being on different timelines. Especially
Well,
'cause-
also, I think in their letter, we ought to be saying that we would like to know who did the work and see if they'll at least give up their person. I mean, if we can get one out of the two, that's better than none.
Yeah, so I would like them to give us the names. I don't see a way we can force them to.
No.
And if they don't, I did mention this maybe in one of the email chains with some of you to ask if the homeowner doesn't want us to contact them and or send them an enforcement, then we can ask the homeowners to send them the letter and just say, look, we're in conservation jurisdiction, you should have known this. So if the homeowner feels comfortable sending the landscaper a letter we draft, that's one option, but if they don't want to give them up, they don't give them up. But at the least, maybe they'll send them a letter and say, you should have known this, working in a coastal environment.
I agree. Okay. I just, a lot of what we've discussed is really because we've talked to people at 65. And, we know how she feels and how upset she is, but we haven't heard anything about 77, and they did it a while before 65 did.
Right. I don't think Paul has been dealing with this because of the site visit aspect of it. So I don't think the other address even knows. So we'll get that enforcement order out, basically tomorrow.
Okay, what do you have, Nikki? Why don't you just sort of summarize what you're going to put in it?
Paul has drafted it. He just put the basic stuff in there, and he wanted to, before I finished it, just kind of get what kind of time frame. Excuse me, I feel like I'm losing my voice. Get some sort of time frame on when and if we want them to appear before we have any sorts of plans, or if it's just a requirement to get some sort of plan. So extent and type of activity, unauthorized clearing and topping of trees in a resource area. And dates, that's really all that's been drafted up. So we just need to figure out hereby what we order. So the property owner, agent, or others shall immediately cease and desist from any activity. So I'll pretty much always check that one. Resource area alterations shall be corrected and the resource areas returned to their original condition. So I would probably, I don't know if I would I'd probably check that one just to be on the safe side, even though they may end up coming with us with a restoration that's not exactly the same. That's more for kind of like remove the shed that you put illegally and revegetate the dead grass under it, I think is more of what that one goes for. And then a restoration plan shall be filed with the issuing authority on or before, and that's the date, and then for the following, and that's just the unpermitted vegetation, cutting and removal.
All right. So we had,
So we're not going to have them do a notice of intent because we wouldn't have approved this on a notice of intent. So you don't want to issue a notice of intent and then them appeal it to DEP, which apparently is a thing now.
right,
And then no further work shall be performed until a public hearing has been held and an order of conditions issued. So we're not going to do that one either since they're not applying for a notice of intent. But then we would check off the property owner shall take the following action to prevent further violations. And that's, again, just hire restoration or cease and desist all work, hire restoration specialist to develop a restoration plan and present before the commission.
okay. We heard a proposal for 45 days. We also have a proposal for 60 days.
Yeah, give them a date certain, say June 1st. It's about 45 days from now.
For June 1st?
Yep,
Yeah, I usually either
I
go with
agree.
like the 1st or the 15th.
yep, 1st of June.
I agree, June 1st.
Okay,
And how about an inventory of what was taken down or cut before the restoration plan is performed?
Yeah, so that could definitely be a part of, at least as far as the 60, I don't think either address is going to know what was cut and how much was cut. So I think that's going to be up to the restoration person, kind of like Phil Cheney did with, this is the trees that I have found.
yeah. It takes a specialist to
Based off
figure it out.
of
Yep.
Google Maps and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And so this is what I'm proposing to replace them. So I think that kind of goes with more of the contractor side of the thing.
Okay,
On 65, they're so fresh. We have photos of all the ones because they left them up as snags. Or not really snags, but, they left them up above ground. So we should be able to tell how many trees were taken.
well,
We don't know
yeah,
what they are.
well, the specialist should be able to easily figure it out. That's the good news. And that's all more important to get it, get everything
Yeah,
moving.
June 1st.
Put them on a site plan.
So June 1st for someone to be hired, a restoration specialist to be hired, and then we will want to talk to them before,
Yes.
before work, and approve a plan before work begins.
Yes.
So continue till,
Well,
Was the
we're
first
simply,
date
we're
in-
voting to ratify,
Yeah, so I would say vote to ratify an enforcement order. I basically told you what I will fill out on it just now, but I can also put it in Dropbox, and if anyone has any specific changes they want to see, I can do that. So basically, it's vote to ratify the enforcement order and have them appear by June 1st of 2023.
have the restoration, well, them or the restoration specialist?
I'm going to say homeowner or the restoration
Okay,
person, just at least someone so we can get
get the
an
conversation
update
going,
on-
yeah.
Yes.
All right,
exactly.
yeah, if you put a draft in Dropbox and send, and let us know it's there, that might be a good idea.
Yeah, I can do that I'll do it either this afternoon or first thing in the morning.
Okay. So we're voting to ratify the enforcement order as discussed
Correct.
for both properties.
move that we ratify the enforcement order for 65 Geranium Drive and 77 Geranium Drive.
Gordon, second?
Roll call vote, Cheryl.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Mary.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
And I vote aye.
And we have a ton of minutes.
Oh, God, we do, don't we? Did everybody get a chance?
We can always do half of them if we don't want to have, I don't remember how many she had on there.
There's six
Six
of
or
them.
seven, six.
Six, count them.
Six. They're in the Dropbox.
I put notes in mine,
Me too.
I put my notes in them.
I put some notes in, I put my notes in there too.
Okay.
And they're by and large typos and,
I sent you my
Yeah, so
changes, Nikki.
if no one has any substantive,
Let's just approve them then.
you know, something that's really like, oh, we said 10 trees, but it's actually 30 trees. If
Right.
there's no like large changes like that and it's just grammar and, oh, you know, some small changes and they're in Dropbox, we can just go through and accept changes and you can vote on all of them. But if there's ones you want to discuss, we can pull those out separately. But actually I guess I need to say the dates. I didn't do that yet.
There was one I did a little question, not in a specific edition, the one that's doing the long catwalk, extending their catwalk.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
did, I don't think we noted in the minutes that we were specifying what the material, that the material needed to be what we originally specified.
Yeah, I was wondering whether or not we, in a subsequent hearing where we did get specific
wondered,
about it. I
yeah.
think that's what I
That's
would,
why-
It came up,
Put it as a
it came up
question.
later.
yeah, I think it came up later. So that's why I thought, well, it's fine for now.
So ignore that one, Nikki.
Okay. All right, so we do have November 9th of 2022, December 14th of 2022, January 4th of 23, January 11th of 23, January 25th of 23, and February 1st of 23.
I think, Bob, you could just say, yeah, all those.
So moved.
That's fine.
So moved, yes.
And Nikki, you got my changes too, right? I emailed some to you and Crystal.
Yes, I did.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for November 9th, 2022, December 14th, 2022, January 4th, 2023, January 11th, 2023, January 25th, 2023, and February 1st, 2023.
Gordon, second?
Roll call vote. Cheryl,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Very good. And one last item of business. I know we've been here long.
So that was
Are we not done yet? What else do we have?
Hearing
That was
schedule.
just discuss hearing
Oh,
changes.
that's right, that's right.
Hearing schedule changes. I just wanted to make sure, I mean, this was the first one that we kind of did everything that we had submitted to us by whatever the deadline was. And just to make sure everyone thought at least this one worked well.
Well, we didn't work on orders of conditions today, but, and from now on, we'll normally.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. We had two.
Oh, that's right, never mind. So normally we'll have a mixture. What do people think about having orders of conditions first or last?
First.
First?
I think people who are here for their order, they should just get it as they can go, and as opposed to having to wait, like poor Phil had to wait.
I agree with that.
Okay, because I was thinking last, but I see the logic of, because you don't want, I don't,
I also think if the orders could be in at least a day ahead of time, we could put our comments in there and make maybe the orders go more quickly.
I agree.
Make any comments, changes,
I
and
agree.
then it could be first and hopefully go quickly. Because I think today's went pretty well, because we had comments even from Seth ahead of time.
Yes, it'd be nice to have all the orders ready by Monday, but.
Monday?
It's probably not,
Gosh, life just
it's
doesn't.
maybe just wishful thinking, I don't know. We had a little mix-up on the golf course on Fox Hill, so Janet and I tag teamed that one yesterday afternoon. Okay, so anyway, I think we're all in agreement that the schedule change is something that we're going to do, and it's basically we
Keep
have.
trying.
We'll have 3 hearings a month. We'll have orders. Whenever we need to do orders, we'll do orders. And we'll see how that goes for the rest of the year and then evaluate it, see if it worked. Anybody have any other?
No.
Yeah, okay, I think we're okay with it. Do we need to vote on it formally or?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Just making sure that everyone was still officially on board after the first time we did it. I mean, it was nice only having 2 orders. Granted, mine was, not until 9:30 or so. So I will try and work on that on my part.
I do think
But-
it's extremely important for us to give everybody at least 24 hours to notice that they're there. Not everybody, some of us aren't really, live on Dropbox like others, and so it may be good whenever some of us are doing these to send out an email to everybody, say, by the way, it's in Dropbox now. That way everybody knows. I think that's a nice practice for us to all follow. Okay, so we're good to go on that.
The brochure.
Brochure time.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. As I mentioned in my email, finally got a graphic back, and you'll see it. Been working some time with a local person. And it basically mimics, wait a minute, wait a minute, oh, got the old one there. I'm looking at an old one. Hope everybody got the right one, yeah. Should say 4/12/23 at the bottom of the front page. And just since we're on the front page, Elise gave us the QR code.
Oh, good job.
And it seems to work. I tried it. You can try it too. And we also have the generic email address that Nikki came up with.
High tech there.
And we have, I think was probably the best phone number to use.
Oh, yeah, it does work.
And then the graphic itself is, as going to say, it's a
Oh, there it is, okay.
You changed the font, which is good.
font is fixed, I think.
That's reaching for
Yeah.
you.
And I didn't really mess with the text much since the last time or two that you saw it. The only thing I may have to work on a little bit, folding it is a little tricky. I may have to fiddle with the columns a little bit to make sure the folding works right. And I think I asked this some time ago, Nikki, do you know if the town has a folding machine? I understand there are folding machines that will do trifolds and things like that. Otherwise, someone is going to have to do this by hand.
So weren't we going to contract it out to someone
Yeah, I
to
don't know. If
do like a thicker paper?
you're going to do that, then that fixes it. So I just didn't.
Yeah.
As long as it's
I don't-
recycled paper.
Recycled paper,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it was gonna be more of like a not card stock, but
So I'm going to spend a little bit more time making sure I got it lined up just right so it folds well, and then I'll send, do we need to vote on this? I think we need to vote on it.
no, I think just a roundabout, everyone's okay with it.
Yeah.
Do you have changes?
Anybody has any changes in the next couple of days, just email them to me.
Nice job.
That's good.
Yeah, it really is good. Thank you for doing this.
If I may suggest, if you're gonna outsource it for any kind of printing or anything like that, do not go to Staples.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, no.
Just worked with
Oh,
them.
no, I did business
No.
with
Was-
them for a
Marconi
while
just
ago.
did that, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
okay, sorry Staples, all right. All right, and then I'll send Nikki, Word doc, and a little bit of instruction on how you print it. You got to stick it in there, print one side, trick it out, flip it over, spin it around, then print the other side.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I'll send the graphic to someone else. I thought we got Dr. Bob's approval to spend some money on it. He usually says yes because I don't spend very much.
I work with Paul, and Dr. Bob approved paying the graphic artist for this image.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was that, not necessarily the printing, but I'm sure that will be fine as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I will let her know that she can bill us.
It's a colored paper
Yes,
too,
and we can
right?
use, that printing place in the industrial park in Orleans or someone like that. Dr. Bob might have someone that we generally use for Chatham documents. So
Okay.
we'll work on that. He just left for vacation for a little bit, so to get his approval is going to take a little bit of time,
Right.
a couple weeks
Okay,
to contract it out. But no, there's no need for one of us to stand at a printer all day, changing paper and all that kind of stuff,
Okay,
or
that's good.
any of you using your own money. So.
that's fine, all right. Very good, so hopefully this will help educate Chatham citizens on what they should be doing with regards to protected wetlands. And maybe we'll get fewer violations over time, who knows?
And this is on colored paper too?
I don't know.
All right.
What color, do you think it should be on colored?
Somewhat, not white.
Not
I
white?
think it should be different than white.
Oh, no, we're gonna talk about color here?
Should be green.
I actually had just thought about making the graphic colored.
Oh, well, actually, the artist does have a colored version of it, but I thought we weren't going to, spend the money to make a color version of this. But if we are,
I agree.
yeah, I'll give you the colored version.
Maybe let me pull it up again. Is there buffer zones on it? Yeah, so,
I'll send you the color version as well of the graphic. It is a little easier to read. I can send that out to everybody, actually. Yeah, I'll send the color version out to everybody and see what they think. All right, one more remaining motion.
Move to adjourn.
Gordon, second?
Roll call vote. Cheryl.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet. Mary.
Aye.
Karen is gone.
No, I'm here. Yeah, aye.
She's voting aye, and I vote aye too. All right. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.